All right. Brian, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for coming on. How you doing, man?
And I'm doing great, Bo. How are you doing?
I'm good. Why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourself and what you're up to?
Yeah. So where do you start, right? I guess I'm a dad and a husband, and have been for quite some time. I'm also a lawyer, podcaster, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu purple belt, computer scientist, philosopher, scratch golf, not scratch golfer, but single digit golfer, fly fisherman, philosopher, reader of books, lover of food. Should I should I keep going?
Sure. uh,
No, I'm just I'm a little bit of a polymath. I know you're not supposed to call yourself that, but I have a lot of very a variety of different interests. I'll put it that way. So
yeah, I'm the same
fitness
way.
is a big part of it. I see you've got a fitness shirt on. I'm 52 now, but I still consider myself an athlete. Always have.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So you know what I mean. A big part of my life. In fact, I saw a great quote. I'm gonna mess it up. I think this was Plato, but I saw this the other day that said, if you're nothing but an athlete or nothing but a warrior, you're too much of a blockhead. And if you're nothing but a scholar, you're too effeminate, and you should be both. And I thought that
Mm-hmm.
was right on the money. You should
Yeah.
strive to be a scholar athlete. That's always been kind of the way I've liked to live my life, kind of what I've encouraged my kids to do as well.
Yeah, I agree. It makes you well-rounded.
Yeah.
Who do you do jujitsu under? And where at?
Opiano. So Opiano Malachias in Houston, Texas, at Gracie Baja. Opiano he is probably the smartest jujitsu person from a business standpoint in the country. He has really done it well, and he's an OG in the jujitsu community. So Opiano
Mm-hmm.
is I think he's a 5 stripe black belt at this point. Came from Brazil, moved to Hollywood, was a bouncer bars. He's about 5'9", 5'10", and started training jujitsu. He started the first jujitsu studio in the United States in Santa Clara through Gracie Baja. And
Really?
then, yeah, and then he met. I think the story is he met his wife, whose dad was in Houston. He decided to come to Houston. He opened a jujitsu studio in Houston, which is now the biggest in the country. I think we've got 800 students, something like that. And he's now opened a
Whoa.
second. Yeah, now he's now opened a second one about 10, 15 miles away in a place called River Oaks in Houston, which is like the super rich, nice part of Houston. So,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and I got really, really lucky, Bo. I'd been thinking about doing jujitsu forever. I started when I was 47, and
Mm-hmm.
I just Googled jujitsu near me, and 8 minutes away is this jujitsu studio, and I didn't know any better. Well, it turns out, I mean, it's literally one of the best in the country. We've got kids programs, we've got women's programs, we've got Muay Thai, we've got wrestling, we've got boxing, we've got 4 or 5 guys that are in literally the best in the world in their uh, weight division. So it's
Mm-hmm.
been awesome, been really really good.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think everybody should do jujitsu, but
Me
not
too.
everybody can. But it is a phenomenal, not only in terms of athletics and getting yourself in shape, but just mentally, how it improves you mentally. I think is really really great.
Yeah, no question about it.
Yeah. Do you compete at all?
I have, and I'm actually planning this year on competing in the world championships. So
Okay.
a couple years ago, I competed at blue belt level, and
Mm-hmm.
I went up to Dallas and fought in a International Brazilian Jiu Jitsu Federation (IBJJF) tournament.
Mm-hmm.
I was scared out of my mind, Bo, the night before, and I'm sure a lot of your listeners will relate to this. I was saying, "What the f am I doing? I'm 48 years old. How can I get out of this?" Like, I'm gonna say I was hurt. I'm gonna make some shit up, and that was what was
Yeah.
going right. Seriously, that's what was going through
Yeah.
my mind the night before.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
and as a lawyer that goes to court, that shit goes through my mind when I go to court too. And the trick, courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is having fear and doing it anyway. And
Yeah.
so, but anyway, I remember the night before, I'm coming up with 10 million reasons why I shouldn't do this, but I went and did it. And boy, I tell you what, when I was done, I was walking on water. I felt so good. It was incredible.
Did you
And
get gold?
yeah, well, no, I lost to a Brazilian guy by a half a point in the finals that had fought like 10 times before. I'd never fought before. So
Yeah.
the guy never came close to submitting me, not even close. And
Mhm.
in fact, the 2 points he got were because I was going after an arm triangle and he kind of rolled me over as I was going for it. And they called that a
Mm.
sweep. And I didn't know
Yep.
the rules well enough. But every year they have the national Masters Championship in Las
Mhm.
Vegas, and
Yep.
I'm thinking about. In fact, I probably will do the Masters World Championships, and I'm going to win it. I'm going to win this thing too. I'm going to be the best 52-year-old brown belt jiu-jitsu practicer in the country.
That's awesome. What weight class do you
Yeah.
compete at?
Right now, I'm at ultra heavyweight, which is bizarre because I don't feel like I'm that big. I'm 6'1", 215. I've actually lost
Mm.
a little bit of weight. I want to fight at heavyweight. I want heavyweight is between 205 and 215.
Yep.
That's where I think I would perform the best. Because the problem is if I fight at ultra at 215, I'm fighting guys that are 260 pounds, right?
Exactly.
So
Yep.
I'm by far the smallest guy in that division.
Yep.
If I'm 207, 208, I'm the biggest, strongest, baddest boy, at least who's in his 50s in that division.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but it's kind of
Yeah.
tough, one of the things that you have to wear if you're fighting in the gi, which is like the karate uniform. You have
Mhm.
to weigh in with that thing on, and that thing weighs
Yep.
about 5 pounds. So you got to and
Mhm.
and it's not like the UFC where they do the weigh-ins the day before and you can cut
Yeah.
weight. It's literally they weigh you right as you're walking out on the mat. So,
Exactly.
and if you don't make the weight by 1/4 of a nanopound, you're eliminated. So
Yep.
my first one, I decided, you know what, I'm just going to enter ultra, and then I'll have to worry about it. This next one, I think I'm going to get to about 200 this year, and I think I can
Mhm.
comfortably compete at that level. So
Mm.
that's kind of the goal.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
I did, something similar. I was competing at, light heavy, and so I'd have to cut for the exact same reason that you talked about as the gi, right?
yeah, yeah,
Walking around, I was right at the benchmark of, I think you're allowed to 181.5, I think is the highest you can go. But with the gi, I'm over that. So I would have to cut 5 pounds. And I did that for the first half of the year and I hated it because I don't know, my metabolism is really weird, man. When I got a cut, my sugar dropped so rapidly that I remember I did pans earlier this year back in March.
yeah, yeah,
And just like you're saying, man, they weighed me. I weighed right at 181 with my gi. And then they
yeah.
walked me out to the mat. And I could remember like I was shaking because I was so hungry and my metabolism was just burning big time. And I didn't have enough time because sometimes you could like maybe grab some honey or have some berries or something like that just to satisfy that glucose that you're going to need.
Yeah.
But I didn't have enough time because I literally like they weighed me and then they called my name.
Right, and then you go right out there. Yeah,
You
you
go
just go
right out
right out there.
there. Yeah, I
Yeah,
didn't have enough time. So then after that, I was like, screw this. I went up to medium heavy, and that I have no problem with. I just, you could be up to 195. So lately, I've been walking around like at like 188. So by the time I put my gi on, I'm weighing in like right at 192, 193, somewhere in there. So I don't even have to worry about it, and I have the energy for the match because I mean, you can attest just doing the match itself is so stressful
yeah.
because it's so fast. It's so much faster paced than what you do in the gym sparring with your teammates.
I locked, with my final opponent, we go in and I did no gi. So my
Mm,
first competition was no gi. And we started standing and we locked into like a traditional kind of standing position. Your head's on his head.
hmm
I've got like a
Collar tie.
neck collar tie, and he's kind of collar tying me. And I remember as soon as we engaged, I was thinking, I'm not sure if this is a family friendly podcast or not, but I
Yeah,
remember just
no, you
thinking,
could say whatever you want.
holy shit, this guy feels like a fucking brick wall, and I got to do
Yeah,
this for 6 minutes. Like the immediate connection was like, this ain't we ain't in Kansas anymore. We're not training. But it's interesting though, and I'd love to hear your perspective on this. So there's a guy at our gym who is a black belt, has fought UFC MMA fights, not the big UFC, but he's fought in UFC sanctioned MMA
Yeah.
fights, and he actually there's a deal on ESPN, I forget what it's called, but he actually had a heart attack in the freaking ring in an MMA fight because he cut so much weight so fast in order to make.
Oh.
And there's a whole documentary about this. And like sometimes I don't I'm a big UFC fan. I assume you are too.
Mhm.
Uh, and some of these guys are weighing in, and they literally weigh 25 pounds more than they weighed. I mean, they look. It's this cutting of weight, this
It's
drastic
dangerous.
cutting. It's
Yeah.
dangerous. It's
Very.
really dangerous. And I don't know what the solution to it is because, as you and I both know, size is definitely an advantage in any fighting sport.
Yeah.
And so you can't have 140-pound people going against 210-pound people. It's just not going to work. But how you manage this weight, this super dangerous
It
weight,
is.
you
And I
know?
tell a lot of the guys in the gym because the gym I'm at is also not only is it jujitsu, but it's MMA as well.
Yeah,
And I tell all the guys because a lot of times I'll help some of the fighters with their cutting weight for their fights. And I tell them, I'm like, you should be no more than 10 pounds from your fighting weight year round.
yeah,
Because if you're having to cut 25 or 30 pounds, you're just being a fucking fat ass the rest of the year.
for
You need to have
sure.
some discipline. You need to be within 10 pounds at all times of your fighting weight because I mean, you know how it is. These guys will get asked to fight at the very last minute and they'll have to try
Yeah,
and cut in 2 weeks,
yeah,
sometimes a week. So it's a lot easier to cut 10 pounds over 6 weeks or even 2 weeks than it is to try and cut 30. Because then what
yeah.
happens is like they're going in the sauna every day and then
Yeah, we're in a trash bag in a sauna. That's what I
right,
was gonna
exactly.
say. Yeah,
And then they're cutting out all their water. So now they're dehydrated, which hence leads to the heart attacks. Or,
yeah,
one guy from our gym had massive kidney problems after his fight and went to the
yeah.
hospital because he had dehydrated himself so bad. No, I agree. I think
There's a
a lot of these,
potential solution to this, though. Let me and it's gonna be interesting to see how this works. So do you know what a GLP-1 is? It's basically a
yeah,
peptide that's a lot of people may not know, but like Ozempic and Wegovy and these new
yeah,
weight loss drugs, they're all based on peptides that are called GLP-1s. And what
right.
I think is going to happen, Bo, is I think people are going to take GLP-1s to cut the weight because you can do it much more safely. Now, the question is going to be, there's going to be people that are going to say, well, that's cheating. And I guess my question is, what's the damn difference between taking a GLP-1 and sitting in a sauna with the trash bag? I mean, what's the difference?
Well,
And
what's the
but it'll,
difference between weighing in 24 hours prior and hitting weight, and then the next day at your fight, you're 30 pounds heavier?
yeah,
That's
which is
sanctioned
which is
cheating.
which is nuts. That's insane.
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm.
So, but it'll be interesting to see if like UFC and some of the other sanctioning bodies decide to get rid of GLP-1s. I mean, you and I both know in jiu-jitsu, steroid use is kind of, I mean, it's not just widespread, it's kind of accepted. So I don't
Yeah.
necessarily see it happening in like IBJJF or pan events
Mm-mm,
or stuff
mm-mm.
like that. But in the UFC and things like that, you never know. I mean, like some of the stuff they ban, you're just scratching your head, like, why would they
Mhm.
ban that stuff? Of course, some of
Yeah,
the
I
stuff
know.
they ban, you understand why they do it, but
Yeah.
it'll be interesting because like GLP-1s, I don't know how much you've been watching this, but
I have been. I've been trying to read up a lot on it.
so at 52 years old, I'm doing a small dose of TRT and a small GLP-1. I've been doing this for about 4 months, and I feel amazing, like
Mhm,
amazing. And it's
mhm.
it's not like I'm some beach model or something, but I'm
Yeah.
back and I'm kind of I don't know how old you are, Bo, but I'm kind of back. My relationship with like eating and food is a lot more healthy now. My
Mhm.
recovery's better, and I just feel better. You know what I mean? So,
Mhm.
um,
Yeah, I interviewed a guy a few weeks ago, Jeremy, Jensen, and he got on Ozempic, and he lost, I think, 80 pounds is what he said he lost.
yeah,
And kinda what you're saying, his relationship with food changed. He was on it for a year, lost the weight, and was able to get off Ozempic and then stay off. And he said, prior to him getting on GLP, the staff would bring donuts in and he'd be the first one at the table grabbing the donut.
yeah.
And then afterwards of taking the GLP, he has no interest, excuse me, in that food anymore. So he doesn't even want it as a part
Isn't
of
that
his diet.
amazing? Isn't that
It
amazing?
is.
Like, I've been on it for a month, and I've been doing a really low dose. I started with semaglutide, which is what Ozempic is based on. I'm gonna try tirzepatide and just compare the 2, but that's the thing that's been amazing to me is like, for example, last night I went to a really nice restaurant with a friend of mine, and instead of getting the full bowl of pasta, I got the appetizer bowl of pasta, and
Mm,
it was, like,
mm,
easy. And,
mhm.
over Thanksgiving, instead of reaching for 8 pieces of turkey, I grabbed 2 pieces of turkey, and that was more than enough. And so I actually, I've talked to some very, very wealthy, smart people, like big time, like guys wealthy with a B in front of it.
Mhm.
People that run companies with tens of thousands of employees. And they've told me that not only are they getting on it, but they think it's so important and so good that they're going to offer it to tens of thousands of their employees because they go through, Bo, and they look at all the guys that get hurt. Half of them are fat and
Yep.
overweight, and that's
Mhm.
why they're getting what are most of the injuries? Back injuries, and that's because you're fat and out of shape and
Yep.
overweight.
Yep.
And he thinks he'll actually not only do good for these people, but it'll do good for himself because he's not going to have nearly as many people with health issues.
Yeah.
And so I think, I mean, we'll see what happens. I'm a trial lawyer, and so I'm
Mhm.
very, very skeptical of pharmaceutical companies, specifically in corporations in general. So I'm always like holding my breath. When's the next shoe going to drop, right?
Mhm.
But these GLP-1s have been around for 25 years. They've been using these for diabetics. So there's actually a lot of science behind them. And unlike stuff like fen-phen, which was giving people heart attacks,
Mhm.
this doesn't have the same type of chemical force that some of the other, like these peptides in general are fascinating to me. I don't know if you've looked into any, there's all these different
Yep.
peptides, growth hormone peptides,
Yep.
peptides that increase your libido, peptides that increase
Mhm.
your recovery. They're all
Peptides
super
to tan
fascinating to
you.
me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing, and, so I'm slowly kind of experimenting with these things because, like I said, a lot of these pharmaceuticals are bringing stuff that I would consider kind of poisonous. It's not something that's
Agreed.
endogenous to your body, whereas peptides,
Agreed.
they're just, letting things that are already in your bodies kinda
Right. Yeah, the
come to
peptides are they're just sections of growth hormone that they've been able to allocate to what they specifically do in the body.
yeah,
For example, PPC 157 or TB 500, which is considered like the Wolverine peptides because they help you with injuries. If you tear a muscle or strain a muscle, you inject these peptides, and then it helps the body regenerate and heal from those injuries. And
yeah.
actually, the FDA just banned BPC 157. So what does that tell you, right?
Why would they do that?
I don't know. I think because like you said, I think the pharmaceutical industry is doesn't want it out there because of
There's your answer.
yeah,
There's your
it'll
answer. They
get
can't
people off.
patent.
Right, right,
Yeah.
right.
This
I
is the kind of bullshit that these companies do, okay?
Yeah, I agree.
They they can't patent peptides. So I'll
Right.
give you a good example of, like, the GLP-1s can't be patented. So what do? They package them up in such a
Mhm.
way that they preload the
Brand
syringes
them.
and brand them and sell them for
Mhm.
500 times more than they cost,
Yep.
and they say, "This is, this," and when you could literally get them from a compounding, factory and do it yourself
Yep.
for 1/100th of the cost. I mean, this is just complete and total horseshit. I'm
I
sorry,
agree. I
but this
agree.
is highway robbery, and the FDA supports them in this in many ways. It's like the FDA. The
Right.
FDA is like the pharmaceutical companies' protector instead of they
Yeah.
should be not knocking these people on the head.
Yeah. I'm slightly skeptical on some of these GLPs, because I've been trying to read up a lot on it, and I'll give you like one positive that I've read that what these GLPs that they've seen. It's all kind of subjective right now. They haven't ran like an official study on it, but what they have found is that the people that are that do go on the GLPs, um, that have addiction problems, they've actually been able to uh, sway them away from their addictions with some of these
Yeah,
GLPs,
yeah,
which makes sense because now you're the second person that has kind of said that your whole mindset around food has changed, right? And so
yeah,
they're seeing a positive effect behind these GLPs with like maybe smokers, can get on a
yeah,
GLP and not want to smoke anymore, or maybe even alcohol, something like that. But then the flip
yeah,
side is I've read studies that said the con with the GLPs is the majority of the weight loss that people are experiencing is actually muscle mass and not fat mass. It's not
yeah,
adipose tissue. So one study found that um, 70% of these group that they studied, 70% of their weight loss came from loss of muscle mass, and 30% came from adipose tissue. And then they did another control group where they had that control group exercise while on these GLP-1s, and the ratios went from 70-30 to 50-50. Well, that is a little scary to me because any person should try and maintain as much muscle mass as possible, especially the older you get, because muscle is ultimately what burns calories. If you are reducing muscle mass, you are setting yourself up for bigger problems down the line. Now, I think
yeah.
what you're doing makes more sense where if you're kind of like microdosing it. Um, so, I think it's too early to say, but I do have pause with some of these based on what I've read.
It's interesting you talk about the muscle loss component of it. So, and I've changed my view on this over the last 5 to probably 10 years. I used to be a cardio type of person, like
Mhm.
running and hiking and all that stuff. And
Mhm.
now I'm really into muscle building, not like
Mhm.
bodybuilder muscle building, but like I lift weights 4 or 5 times a week. I do it primarily for injury prevention to make my
Mhm.
ligaments and joints strong and all that stuff. And I would rather, Bo, be 10 pounds overweight and muscular
Yes.
than weigh the quote right weight and be weak and skinny. And so
Agreed.
I was having dinner last night with this friend of mine who is a billionaire and can afford whatever he wants. And
Mhm.
he's doing a little bit of TRT and a little bit of terzepatide. He's lost 38 pounds. He's 6'5", so he's a really big guy. He went from 250 and now he's down to 211. And
Mm.
I asked him, I said, have you lost muscle? Because it's not worth it to me if you're losing a bunch of muscle. And
Right.
like in fact, for guys like me and you, having a little extra weight in jujitsu is helpful. You don't want to have too much
Mhm.
weight, but being able to smash people helps. And so
Yes.
what I've read is that semaglutide, which is the GLP-1 behind Ozempic, has that muscle wasting issue, and
Mhm.
tirzepatide doesn't have it as bad. But I'll
Okay.
tell you what, the second I start losing too much muscle, I'm quitting that stuff immediately because, like I said, to me, I know a lot of it. There's actually a really good book. It's an old book called Fit or Fat, which basically says you're healthier
Mhm.
with a little bit of extra body weight than being too damn skinny with no muscle.
Mhm.
So
Correct.
the second I start getting too damn skinny and losing my muscle, I'm getting off of that stuff. But I'm going to try to do, like I said, is a lowest dose I can.
Mhm. Mhm.
I'm not trying to lose 50 pounds. I'm trying to lose 10, 12
Yeah.
pounds.
Mhm.
Just a stubborn weight when you're fit. And
Yep.
by the way, there's a whole nother discussion we could have about the mindset that people have about this. Well, why don't you just exercise? Why don't you just eat right? Hey, look, asshole. Last year I quit drinking. I do jujitsu 6 days a week.
Mhm.
I play golf and carry my bag, which is 6 miles and 2,000 calories twice a week. I eat good, and I'm 52, and it just wasn't happening. And
Yeah.
so I'm sorry, I don't think it's cheating at all. I think it's in other words, I'm not trying to lose tons of weight. I think people that are morbidly obese or really, really overweight, I can see how they would lose a lot of muscle. Um,
Mhm. Mhm.
but we'll see. It's an experiment, and I'll either get what I want, or I'll learn something, and I'll be able to, you know what I mean? It's like, okay, this worked.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, it didn't work. I'll try something different.
Yeah, I think what you're doing, you're doing it right. Lowest dose possible, little TRT, and you keep exercising. That is key for everybody. That's the problem is most, especially
Yeah,
Americans, we don't move enough. We're a
that's right.
very stagnant society, and we do not move enough. And so what you're doing, I think, is primary. Recently a study came out. It was I saw it on social media yesterday. It was kind of surprising to me. So, what I tell everybody that works with me um, is your goal should be to hit at least 1 gram per pound of body weight of protein every day.
Yeah.
And as you age, your protein synthesis actually diminishes. So as you age, you actually have to eat more protein for your body to assimilate that and synthesize it to repair and build new muscle cells. And the new study that came out, because this has always been a topic for like the last 10 years, there's been a lot of arguments. Is like, oh, you don't need that much. You only need 0.5, you only need 0.8, but this new study that came out showed that the groups that they were testing that had highest doses possible, and when I say highest doses, they were eating upwards of 2 grams per kilogram of body weight, if not even higher. I think they even went all the way up to like 2.2 grams. They saw a much higher increase in size, muscle density, and mass. So, moral of the story is more protein is better for your body, according to what I read yesterday. And that's another thing. People think they're eating right and they're really not, right? Because I always hear all the time, I'll just cut out carbs. No, don't cut out carbs. Carbs are your body's primary source of fuel. I
Yeah.
always say start with protein, everything else will fall in line. If you try and get at least 1 gram per pound of body weight of protein every day in your diet, you will see massive changes in your body comp and your healing and all of that stuff. And the people that do listen to me, it's night and day for them. They're like, God, I feel amazing. I feel great, and all that stuff. So I think everything that you're doing, and then you add on top of that, getting enough adequate protein every day is a game changer.
I've heard the same thing, and you're right about the carb thing, by the way. And I think different people react differently. But what I found, like if I was just doing my lawyer stuff and I'm not in there fighting 30-year-old black belts from Brazil every single day at lunch, maybe I don't need as many carbohydrates. But when I'm doing that, I got to have a source of energy, and so I get most of my carbs from fruit now, and
Yeah, me too.
and so I'll either do a big protein shake in the morning and maybe eat some berries or something like that, or I'll do like 4 or 5 eggs in the morning, go
Hmm.
do jujitsu, come back, I'll put some fruit in a blender with some water, boom, knock that out, and then eat some sardines or some oysters or some eggs or some sort of protein. I'm like pure protein and
Yeah.
pure fruit up until dinner time, and then at dinner time, I kinda just eat what I want. Because, like, that's the other thing I think food is a great source of pleasure for a lot of
Hmm.
people, including me. Like
Hmm.
food, we should celebrate good food. The problem
Hmm.
is we don't have good food. It's all garbage for the
It's all
most part.
garbage. Yeah.
Yeah, and so what I try to do is I try to eat super duper clean,
Yeah.
mainly protein and good carbs during the day. And then at night, if I want to eat a small bowl of pasta, let's get it on, man. Let's have a steak. Let's have some spaghetti. Who cares as long as you're not completely overdoing it? So
Yeah. Yeah.
I've heard the same thing about protein, and in fact, I've heard that most adults don't get nearly enough protein.
Nowhere near. No.
Yeah.
No. Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, last year, January of last year, I started like a modified carnivore diet. I just wanted to try it, you know. Before I was just a typical Mediterranean bodybuilder slash kind of diet, you know, rice, potatoes, and then your normal protein. So I just wanted to try a modified carnivore to see how I would feel. I felt phenomenal. So I
Nice.
started in January of last year. I did exactly what you did. Um, just concentrated on the protein. You know, I'm not shy about red meat. I love red meat. I don't ever have because, you know, red meat gets a lot of bad press. That's bad information. Red meat is great for you.
I agree.
Lot,
I
lots of
agree.
eggs,
Yeah.
you know, and then I would just have some berries. You know, I would stick to berries, maybe pineapple, and then the only other carb source would be honey. And I would get locally sourced honey, not the honey you get off of a grocery store, because most of the time that's crap is loaded with sugar,
Yeah.
processed sugar. I would get I know a couple of guys that have bee farms near me, so I would get local honey, and I would actually get local maple syrup as well, because there's a maple farm near me that I'd get local maple syrup. And
Nice.
you want to talk about like my inflammation went down, my mental clarity went up. I didn't get the brain fog, because a lot of times, like if I eat around, you know, my lunch meal, before I would have maybe some ground beef and rice and whatever, right? Or some chicken and rice or chicken and potatoes. And I would eat that. And then afterwards, I'd just be like, oh my God, I'm ready for bed. You know, I'm sluggish, I'm tired.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I switched it to this modified carnivore, never had that problem. Never got
Nice.
sluggish, never got fatigued, didn't brain fog went away. So I think there's something behind that style living too.
There's something in the American food system that is jacked up. There are so many anecdotal stories of people going to Europe. I'll give you a good example of I went to London many years ago. I was
Mhm.
drinking like 6 Guinness beers a day. And anybody that's had a Guinness beer, it's like a milkshake.
Yeah.
And I lost 5 pounds when I was over there.
Wow.
Yeah, it was crazy. If I drank 6 Guinness a day in the United States, I
Yeah.
gained 20 pounds in a month, and I think it's 2 things, Bo. I think the first thing is what you mentioned earlier, which is Americans are far too inactive, far too inactive. In
Mhm.
fact,
Mhm.
I think the best exercise in the world is walking. Like, that's
Yes.
like, we everybody should be walking 30 minutes to an hour every single day, basically. That is
Yep.
such good you don't feel like you're getting good exercise, but it's so healthy for you in so many
So
ways.
healthy. So healthy.
But then the second part of that is there's I don't know whether it's chemicals or
Mhm.
bioengineered stuff, but there is something in our food that is screwing us up. And one of the things
Mhm.
it's doing it's causing all these autoimmune diseases. It's causing
Mhm.
inflammation. I used to think, and I think a lot of people used to think that cholesterol was like this super big indicia of health. I actually think it's not cholesterol, it's inflammation. And so anything you
Yes.
can do to lower the inflammation in your body is good for you. And the
Yes.
American diet is so inflammatory. Like you hear people go over to Europe, they eat
Mhm.
this French diet and they feel great. And they come back to the United States and they have one meal and all of a sudden they feel like garbage again. And like,
Yep.
I actually look, Robert F. Kennedy is a complete weirdo in a lot of ways. Seriously, he is a strange guy, but some of the stuff he is saying about the
I
food supply is
Yep.
spot on. And you know
Spot
what?
on.
I'm far more likely to listen to a guy that looks like
Mhm.
him from a physical standpoint than some fat, out of shape person like Bill Gates telling
Yes.
me. I mean, Bill Gates probably couldn't do one push-up, and he's preaching to me about what's good for my health. Is this a joke? You know what
I
I
couldn't
mean?
agree more. I couldn't agree more. Yeah. Um, you know, back to your comment about walking. So when I went to Pans earlier this year, I had that last pound. I just could not get rid of that last pound, right, to make weight. And so when I flew down, because Pans was in Orlando, the 2 nights, I think I flew down 3 nights before my my match because my teammates were competing before me, so I wanted to be there to support them. And so those 3 nights before, no, the 2 nights before my match, I walked at night, right? So we would all go out to dinner. I would eat,
Yeah.
I was just having a steak. That was it. No carbs, just steak. Um, and then I would go out at night and I would walk around the block a couple of times. And when I weighed in, I was like money. I was like right
Yeah.
on just from walking,
Yeah.
right? Just from
Yeah.
walking. I didn't do anything different diet wise or training wise. In fact, I trained less because I wasn't doing my normal jujitsu classes that I would normally do, but just walking. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
100%. It's, and then to your comment about cholesterol, I mean, I agree because here's the thing that people don't understand about cholesterol. Cholesterol has been um, put in the evil bracket for so many years. But here's the thing: cholesterol is an anti-inflammatory in the body,
Absolutely, it is. Yeah.
and so if you are taking cholesterol medicine to reduce your cholesterol, you are increasing inflammation, and the subset of that is testosterone is derived from cholesterol. And
Yeah.
that is why the average 20-year-old male has the same testosterone level as a 70-year-old male from the 20s.
Yeah.
And I think again what you're saying about the food supply, it's that kind of stuff. Is you're eating all this processed stuff, you're not moving, you're not
Skim milk.
exercising.
You remember
Yeah,
that
skim,
skim milk
yes,
supposed to
yes,
be
skim
so
milk.
healthy for you.
Yeah,
Skim milk is garbage, man. Like
garbage.
it's got so much shit in it.
Yeah,
You are so much better off just eating vitamin D,
vitamin D.
whole
Yeah.
milk,
Or
and like
if you can get unpasteurized milk too.
yeah, but guess what? It's hard for the farmers or it's hard for
Yes.
the Monsantos of the world to make a bunch of money off of that stuff. And
Yeah.
one of the things that I think this is might sound kind of silly, but I watch what my dog does. So you know what my dog does in the morning? My dog goes out and lays in the sun for 15 minutes every morning,
Yeah.
right? That's so
Yeah.
good for you. So I go out, the sun's out, I go out, I literally take all my clothes off except a pair of swim shorts and just lay in the sun for about 10 minutes. When an animal is in the wild, like a predator, what's the first thing he goes to eat? He goes to eat the liver. Why does he go to eat the liver? Because it's
Mhm.
freaking packed
Packed.
with nutrients, and the
Yeah.
animals know that. Like, and so you put, and dogs will eat just about anything, but what they really like is the stuff that has the most nutrients, that has the
Mhm.
densest nutrients, because
Mhm.
they've evolved to go after the stuff that's going to ensure their survival. So, like steak, I mean, people, oh, steak's bad. That steak's not bad for you. Steak's
No.
got so much good stuff in it.
Yep.
It's so well balanced. It's got fat. It's got protein. It's got all these minerals and stuff. And people, the Monsanto's of the world, been telling us to eat potato chips and this little fake food that's one. I tell you one good thing. Here's a good little rule of thumb for you. If it says it's healthy on the packaging, it's not healthy. You
Lie.
don't need you
Yeah.
don't you don't need to say you don't need to put something on an apple that says this is healthy,
Yeah.
right? Anything that is making health claims on the packaging is not healthy. A
Yeah.
steak, it doesn't say, "Oh, steak has it's so good for you," and blah blah blah. The only thing you
Yeah.
see making health claims is these prepackaged cardboard food-like substances that they want us to eat.
It's funny you say that about your dogs because my dog, it's the same thing with my dogs. So if I'm cooking like chicken or eggs or whatever, my dogs typical, they'll stare at me, they'll try and get a scrap, but they're not like really hounding me. The minute
Yeah,
I break out a steak and I
yeah.
cook a steak and I sit down at the table, they will literally just stare me. They'll stare through my soul and drool. They don't drool out of with any other food, but anytime I
Yeah.
bring out red meat, they are sitting there drooling over that food. So I
They
agree with you.
know.
I mean,
They're
they know.
smarter than us when
They're
it comes
smart.
to that
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
You look at these orcas. These
Yeah.
orcas will go in and they will, specifically attack a great white shark's liver. Like, they will just
Yeah.
boom, because
Yeah.
they know that
They
that
know.
thing is packed with
Mhm.
nutrients and energy and healthy things and all that
Yeah.
sort of thing. So I kinda like to watch what my dog does, and kind of mimic him. And the other thing that they do is they go out there, and I let my dog out front yard sometimes at night, going all over the place, and then he comes in and he goes to sleep. So, like periods of really hard exertion and hard
Mhm.
work, followed by periods of rest and periods of
Mhm.
literally not doing anything, which is important. And guys that are athletes like you and me, Bo, I tell people the hardest thing for me is to take a day off because
Yeah.
I enjoy working out. I
Mhm.
enjoy doing all the physical stuff. Like I feel better when I do it, but you have to build in some recovery time. So like this
Yes.
past Sunday, man, I was so sore. I've been working, exercising so hard the week before. I was like, I'm gonna take Sunday totally off. Completely, I'm not doing anything. Well, of course, I had to go in there and lift a few weights because I didn't feel right, but I didn't do it that hard. But
Mhm.
like you see, why do dogs sleep all the time? They sleep all the time. It's the second it's time to go, they want to be ready to go,
Right.
right? And so
Right.
they know the wisdom of just laying around and doing nothing. And guys like you and me, and probably a lot of your listeners that are athletes, I think it's harder for us on the recovery side than it is on the exercise side. We've got to force ourselves to be lazy a little bit and to be and to have that good recovery time. I'm going to Colorado on Saturday for 13 days. I won't do jujitsu for 1 day. And that's the only way I can. Otherwise, I'm going to do it every day if I can,
Yeah.
right? But I,
Yeah.
I have to have a little bit of time to let some of these little nagging things kind of
Mhm.
recover. So don't
Mhm.
forget about the importance of rest and sleep. In fact, I think sleep at 52 is the most important thing I do
I
from a health
Oh,
standpoint.
yes. 100%.
Yeah,
Yeah. I agree 100%. Yeah, a lot of these guys that brag about, "Oh, I only need 4 hours of sleep, a night and I'm good to go." Yeah, well, for now, you
for
know,
now.
for now, and wait till you have a heart
Yeah,
attack when you're 50 years old because you're not letting
yeah.
your body recover, you know?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Um, man, we just spent 40 some minutes just talking about jujitsu and fitness. I love it, man.
I love it,
So
man. I love
so
it.
you're a trial attorney, eh? I mean, you're
Yeah.
still practicing?
Yeah, I am, and been doing it for 25 years now. I've had my own firm with a partner for 20 years as of this year. So
Okay.
people are like, "What do you do?" I say, "I sue insurance companies, basically." But essentially, anybody that gets hurt, killed, screwed in a business deal, screwed by an insurance company or a pharmaceutical company, I'm the guy you want to hire, and
Oh my
I
god, we can
love
go
doing
down
it.
into a deep rabbit hole with this, Brian. I was
Yeah,
literally just telling this story on a recent podcast. The insurance industry needs a complete overhaul. It is just
yeah,
completely morally bankrupt. And here's
yeah,
my reason why. So earlier this year, right before Pans, I hurt my knee in jujitsu. Very odd injury, right? I happened to be getting up off the mat, so I rolled to my knees and then I stood up. But when I rolled to my knees, I kind of felt like maybe I rolled over a little pebble that was on the mat, but there was no pebble. And I did something to my patella or my bursa sac and my knee, and then I literally left jits and I went to my office and my knee just blew up, right,
yeah, yeah.
filled with fluid. And so I gave it a couple of days, and it wasn't going down. So I went to urgent care. Urgent care wants to do an X-ray. I'm like, an X-ray is not the answer because you could tell this is tissue.
It's gonna be
And
bone. Yeah, it's not gonna show you anything
right, and so
other
they're
than you
like,
got a
it's just
broken bone. Yeah,
right. They're like, it's just our policy. Okay, fine. Now, mind you, I did this as a cash pay. Okay. So it was
yeah,
$75 at urgent care for them to look at me and do this x-ray and give me the results. Did it. Doctor comes in. We don't see anything. Maybe just ice it and put an ace bandage around it, get some compression on there to push that fluid out. Okay. So I do that for 2 more days, 2 or 3 more days. Still wasn't going down. Now I decide I'm going to go to the orthopedic center that's down the street from me. I go there and I tell them what's going on with my knee. And they're like, okay, um, uh, we need your ID and insurance card. I'm like, I'm cash pay. Okay. So they're like, it's $250 for the office visit. Fine. And I said, I know I'm going to need MRI. And they said, okay, well, we're going to want to do an x-ray too. I said, no, I just had an x-ray done at urgent care down the road. I'm not paying for another x-ray. You could get the results from them. Well, it's our policy that you get an x-ray. I'm like, I'm telling you right now, I'm not paying for another x-ray that I had 2 or 3 days ago. And they said, well, we typically want an x-ray image within 24 hours. I'm like, that's bullshit.
Wow.
So they're like, okay, fine. So I go sit down in the lobby. They call me back. The girl grabs me and is like, okay, we're going to come back here and do an x-ray. I'm like, look, I'm a cash pay customer. I am not going to do another x-ray when I had one done 3 days ago. I'm here for them to look at my knee and possibly get an MRI. So she looks at her office manager and she's like, it's fine. Just put him in a room. Okay, so let me fast forward. They decide to do an MRI. They're like, if you can come back today in the afternoon, we can squeeze you in to do this MRI. So they do the MRI, cash pay, $500 for this MRI out of pocket, okay, because I'm cash pay. They give me the results. They think it's burst or sac based on the MRI results. 3 weeks later, I get a bill from the orthopedic center for $1,500. I call them up and I said, why are you guys billing me? I was a cash pay customer. Well, that's the cost of the MRI. I said, no, the MRI was $500 out of pocket, which I paid at the time I was in the office. And they're like, oh, yes, we do see this. So, moral of the story, why is it that these groups will submit a bill for $1,500 to the insurance company, but then a cash pay customer only has to pay $500? Why are they not billing the insurance company $500 rather than $1,500? And I know the answer
Yeah.
behind that, but that's where I'm saying it's just so back asswards how we're handling medicine in the U.S.
It is, and I mean, I could not agree with you more on this, Bo. And it's so bad, it's so deeply embedded that people, even doctors and nurses, don't even realize how screwed up it is. They just think this is reality. And what happened, the history behind this is important. In after World War II, there were a bunch of GIs coming back looking for jobs. And we decided, a lot of these corporations decided one of the benefits they were going to offer them was health insurance. That's where health insurance related to a job got started. It wasn't like somebody did some study and said, this is the most efficient way or this is the best way. It was just kind of pulled out of people's asses. And
Mm-hmm.
here's the problem is we got all these right wingers that say, I don't want Obamacare. We don't want socialized medicine. Well, guess what, dumbass? You have socialized medicine right now. There's
Mm-hmm.
3 insurance companies that decide whether you get care or not, you dipshit. We
Mm-hmm.
don't have a free market and we've never had a free market
Mm-hmm.
in insurance. What we've got is we've got an oligarchy. We've got 3 insurance companies that decide over your doctor and your nurse. And most
Mm-hmm.
of your doctors and nurses don't even bother fighting back, quite frankly. And they decide whether you get care. And guess what? All you free market people, oh, free market this and free market that, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. It's not a
Mm-hmm.
free market. You know what a free market is? A free market is when you've got a willing, free buyer and a willing, free seller, and they get together and they come to an agreement. That's a free market. When you got a fucking brain tumor, you don't have a free choice.
Right.
Healthcare is not a free market thing. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
When your
Mm-hmm.
wife is pregnant, okay, you don't want to be in a free market. You want her to be able to go to the hospital and get the best care she can get. You don't want to be negotiating with 17 different OBGYNs on who's the cheapest. I mean, this idea that medicine should be a free market is the dumbest idea I've ever heard. And everybody that says it is an idiot, quite
Mm-hmm.
frankly. On the flip side, we shouldn't be having insurance companies and bean counters in some building in Ohio deciding whether your kid
Mm-hmm.
gets the treatment that his doctor has said he needs. And so I don't know what the solution to it is, Bo, but one thing I know for sure is the current system is not the solution. This is a terrible, terrible system. And it
Mm-hmm.
was designed, and quite frankly, it's an incentive thing. I like I could tell you things about insurance companies that would make you so pissed off. For example, I'll give you one example. They're exempt from antitrust laws.
I know.
Why are insurance companies exempt from antitrust laws? If an insurance, like if you buy a disability policy, say so you get hurt, the insurance company will pay for your wages and stuff. Guess what? They can deny you and they can be wrong and still win as long as it's a reasonable explanation. They have special federal protection. And so if people want to get mad about something, and by the way, it's the same thing with the pharmaceutical companies. Do you know
Yes.
there are two countries in the world where pharmaceutical companies are allowed to advertise directly to consumers, the
Mhm.
United States and
US
New
and New
Zealand.
Zealand. Yep.
Why the hell are pharmaceutical companies advertising directly to consumers? This is stupid and insane.
Yes.
Like
Mhm.
so if you want to get mad, what you want to look at is you want to look at the true culprits. And guess what? It ain't the socialists and it ain't the right wingers. It's the
Mhm.
damn insurance companies and pharmaceutical companies that have used all their money and all their power to pass special laws to protect them at everybody else's expense. And so that you put your finger kind of directly on the problem. We do not have a free market. We've never had a free market. And you don't want a free market because you can't have a free market when you're talking about people's lives and health.
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
that's a different that's not like that's not like you and me saying, "Oh, hey, Bo, I like your car. Can I buy from you?" And you and I negotiate a price and we're both free to walk away. Like you can walk away, I can walk away. I can't walk away if I got a medical condition that has to be treated. Like I have no choice. So the bargaining power is all screwed up and you
Yes.
just can't have a free market in that circumstance. And the fact that people can't wrap their heads around this is so frustrating. I actually saw Jimmy Kimmel did something a while back. He asked a bunch of people on the street, he said,
Mhm.
"What do you think about the Affordable Care Act?" And like 9 out of 10 people were like, "I think it's great. It's provided my family with health care. I love the Affordable Care Act." "What do you think about Obamacare?" "Oh, I hate Obamacare. That shit is terrible." Right? Same damn
Yeah.
thing. It's just a different name for the same thing. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
the people aren't educated about. And again, I'm not saying Obamacare is the answer. I don't think it is.
Mhm. Mhm.
I'm just saying people are ignorant. Like they don't my wife goes to get she has a sniffle and she goes and uses their insurance. And I'm just like, wow, I would just pay 25 bucks or 50 bucks. Like,
Yeah.
why do you need to
Right.
use insurance for something like that?
Yeah.
Insurance is supposed to be, Bo, for catastrophic events, right?
Exactly right. Yes.
It's not supposed to be for day-to-day stuff. It's not supposed
Right.
to that origin now we've got it to where you want to go get your eyes checked. You hope insurance pays for it, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. No, I agree 100%. And do you know who Dennis Prager is?
sure, yeah. Prager
Prager U.
University, absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah.
I listened to him on a podcast and he mentioned exactly what you just said, Brian, where insurance should be used for catastrophic. He's like, if your car breaks down, you don't expect to do your repairs through your insurance company, right? But if you get
Yep.
into a wreck, you want the insurance company to handle it. Medical should be handled the same way. If you've got a sniffle, why is that going through the insurance company? Just go to the
Yeah.
doctor, pay the office visit, whatever, and the doctor should be able to be competitive with their office visit prices
Right.
when it comes to
Right.
simple things like cold and flu or whatever, right? But if you're having a heart attack or you have cancer, you want insurance to be able to cover
For
those
sure.
absorbent bills. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I agree. Are you familiar with Ways to Well out of Austin, Texas?
No, huh?
So it's owned by a guy named Ferris Bueller, like the movie.
Really?
Yeah, like the
Yeah.
movie. Yeah,
Nice.
and he's been on Rogan a couple of times, and he's actually pretty heavy in the jujitsu world because Gordon Ryan and a lot of these jujitsu athletes will go to his facility because he does like PRP and stem cells and all these different
Yeah.
IV types, and he also prescribes TRT and peptides. But he used to work as a pharmaceutical rep. And so his mission in life is to basically disrupt the pharmaceutical and the medical industry. And he was on Rogan's podcast. And I might be butchering this, but this blew my mind when it came to the pharmaceutical industry. He said, as an example, metformin. Are you familiar with metformin?
Yeah, sure. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
So he said, as an example, metformin. If you come to me and you want metformin because you're, borderline diabetic or whatever, if it costs me $1 per pill, I'm going to charge you two. And I'm very transparent with my prices. If you go to the doctor, maybe they'll charge you, the same, maybe $3 or whatever, right? But the minute the doctor's office finds out that you have insurance, they have an automatic gag order put in place where they are not allowed to disclose their prices. And the price, the medicine has to go through a pharmacy benefit manager where they will charge $10 per pill for that same medicine that I'm only charging $2 because the insurance companies own the pharmacy benefit managers, and the pharmacy benefit managers are in cahoots with the pharmaceutical industry, and it's just one big circle jerk amongst all of these three
Yeah,
industries, and it ends up
yeah.
screwing the end consumer.
Can I ask you a question too? One of the ways that the pharmaceutical companies justify the high prices is, oh well, we make life-saving medication. Tell me the last life-saving medication that you remember a pharmaceutical company coming out with. I mean, I'm sure there's a few that maybe treat some sort of real specific rare disease, but for
Mm-hmm.
the most part, what the pharmaceutical companies are coming out with is boner pills
Mm-hmm.
and opioids and stuff that can't be patented, so they repackage it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what the exact statistics are, but the majority of pharmaceutical companies' expenses are advertising and marketing costs, not development costs. It's
Correct.
not R&D. Who came up with the polio vaccine? The United States government came up with
Mm-hmm.
that. So I don't buy. I think the pharmaceutical companies do provide a good service. I'm glad we have them, but it's not like they're coming out with all these life-saving medications every month. That's not what they. And in fact, that's not what they're trying to do, Bo. What they're trying.
No.
Let's say there's a disease that affects 2,000 people and it's fatal every single time, and the pharmaceutical companies could invest money to save those 2,000 people. They wouldn't do it because it's not
Mm-hmm.
enough money. They're looking for the blockbusters like the hair loss treatment. That's what they're looking for, which, by the way,
Mm-hmm.
there's nothing wrong with that. And there's nothing wrong with boner pills or anything like that. But I'm just saying, let's not pretend like we're saving babies with cancer. That's not really what they've been doing, at least
Mm-hmm.
lately. And so I support a total rethinking
Mm-hmm.
of the way the pharmaceutical companies and insurance companies have done business. And it's interesting because I was what you would consider a Republican for a long time. And then I became a trial lawyer and I saw what these pharmaceutical companies and insurance companies were doing. And I saw the right wingers supporting them doing it. And I said, this
Mm-hmm.
is bullshit. And now
Mm-hmm.
what I see, and I love this, now what I see is I see people on the right and I see people on the left, and they're coming together on this. And they're saying, look, we it's a bipartisan deal. Like we
Mm-hmm.
on both sides, they're saying there is a problem with these companies that are selling products that are killing people, and they're not telling them about it. And
Yep.
guess what? I hear something else. You can't sue pharmaceutical companies for
Yep.
almost anything other than a failure to warn. So, like those
Mm-hmm.
labels they have, that's why they're so damn long and they're in 6-point font is
Mm-hmm.
because they just if they warn you about it, then it doesn't matter. Like you can't sue them for products liability, can't sue them
Mm-hmm.
for negligence. I mean, they've got so many protections. Where do they get those protections? They give a bunch of money to politicians who pass laws in their favor. That's how it works in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
But the good news is I see that changing. I'm actually so happy that Robert Kennedy is not a damn doctor or
Mm-hmm.
pharmaceutical rep. I mean, the FDA head for the last however many years has been in bed with the industry. Like,
That's right.
what are we doing here? And you know what happens? I see this as a lawyer. First, I saw this with Merck in a case I just finished up. Most of the people that work in Merck's the department that interacts with the FDA used to
Mm-hmm.
work at the
Yeah.
FDA.
Right. Right.
Right? I mean, what are we
Right.
doing? It's just a revolving door. So
Right.
when you're at the FDA, you're making 100 grand a year as a doctor,
Mm-hmm.
and you know you're going to work. in the private industry at some point and make $1 million a year, are you going to be especially harsh on your future employer? Of course you're not,
Right.
right?
Right.
So it's just
Right.
like this revolving door of corruption. And I'm
Yes.
so glad, like I said, Robert Kennedy is a complete weirdo about a lot of stuff. But as far as this stuff goes, I think he is right on the money. And
I agree.
I hope he stirs shit up in that industry like it's never been stirred up before. It's about
Yes.
time, right?
Yeah. I agree 100%. I mean, look at how tragic it was, right? I think the public is fed up with insurance, pharmaceutical, medical, because I'm sure you've seen, the United Healthcare CEO was assassinated,
Yeah.
and it was because
And
people are
nobody
just fed up.
cares.
Nobody
Which
cared,
is
right?
which
It's
is sad,
sad,
like, it's
yeah,
sad this guy's a father and a husband,
right.
but his company is so shitty that
Yep.
people just don't care, right? Like,
Eh,
it's
yeah.
like Joker level stuff. I don't know if you saw those. There was, like, a look-alike contest of the shooter in New York. Everybody's wearing hoodies, same
Mhm,
colors as this guy.
mhm,
It's
mhm.
like a scene from the Joker.
Yeah, yeah. And then what's crazy is the same day, Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield came out and said that they were not going to pay for anesthesia for surgeries after a certain amount of time. And then there was so much public outcry and pushback, they pulled back on that decision. I'm
Yeah.
thinking to myself, are you not human?
Who
You're
did
gonna
that? Yeah.
who did that? That is just
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just I don't even have words how disgusting that industry is to me.
That's why I'm here, to sue the shit out of these companies, and because that's the only thing they listen to is money, quite
Yeah.
frankly, and
But
it's
do you
hard
find that
because
it's
they've got all.
sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, it's hard because they passed all these special protective laws, and so, like, successfully suing an insurance company is not an easy task, and there's not many people that can do it, so
That was my question because I mean they have such huge pocketbooks. Is it
yeah.
hard for you to get anything out of them or anything done being a trial attorney when you've got this conglomerate that is basically it's I mean it's even subsidized by the government in some aspects. So
So it's not hard because they have a lot of money on the legal front. Like I'm whipping their ass in court. I don't care. I hire a bunch of New York lawyers from Harvard, please. I'll go have those guys their tail between their legs running out of Texas before you know it. Where it's most hard is when they pass special laws that protect them
mm,
and are don't protect everybody else. So, for example, in most states, you can't even mention the word insurance to the jury. The jury will not know insurance is involved at all. You know why? Because the second they know that insurance is involved, they're like, "Well, pay this person." And the insurance companies have passed special laws that says you can't talk about that. And so all the time in trials, people will be like, "Why is an insurance company paying?" And I'm like, "Sorry, I can't talk about that. I'm not allowed to say anything about it. I wish I could talk about that,
wow.
but I can't." Yeah, it's so that's what makes it hard. So I guess what I'm saying is the American court jury system has tons of flaws, but it's the best in the world. And if I go in there against an insurance company, most of the time my client's going to be in the right. I'm gonna whip them most of the time at trial. But then they game the system to where they buy the appellate judges, so the appellate judges will throw the verdict out, or they'll get
Jesus.
special protective laws that make it to where you can't even get to court. Like I was telling you, like I have to prove in a disability case not only that they were wrong, but they were idiotically wrong because they can be
Mhm,
wrong and still win. And
mhm,
so if it's an even playing field, they got no chance against me. None. I'm gonna beat them almost all the time. So they try to change the playing field and they try to because they know they can't compete. Oh, free market capitalism, they don't want competition. They don't want
right,
competition because they're going to
right,
lose, right?
right,
And so
mhm,
that's why they have antitrust laws.
mm,
No competition. All
mhm,
you insurance people talking about free markets and all this shit, and then you got antitrust laws to
mhm,
protect you from competition. I mean,
mhm,
it's like we're not thinking straight about this stuff. So, but like I said, I think the good news is there's like bipartisan people are starting to wake up. I think part of this is the internet makes a lot of this information more openly available.
Mhm,
I think
mhm,
shows like Joe Rogan's show and other shows, as much as they have some fruitcakes on there, there's also some great stuff that's come out that one of my big things, Bo, forever has been I think the drug war is the stupidest thing we've ever done in our country. I think it's
mhm,
the reason we have immigration problems. I think it's the reason we have police brutality problems. I think it's the reason Chicago is a shit city right now. I think it's a problem with weapons. But there's so many entrenched interest here.
mhm, mhm,
Like the idea that cannabis is more dangerous than cocaine and heroin is so stupid that you
mhm.
really have to question the motivations of the people making those decisions, right?
Yeah.
Any
Mhm,
idiot knows that cannabis is literally one of the safest substances known to man, right?
mhm.
Why did we and if you look at the history, it's not like we did a study that said it was dangerous. Here's what happened. Harry Anslinger, who was the head of what used to be the DEA during Prohibition gets overturned. He didn't have anything to do. So he started talking about the blacks and the Mexicans were raping white women. He just totally made up these stories. And then Richard Nixon comes along and says, well, who's doing the psychedelics? It's all the hippies and the black people, and they vote Democratic. So I'm going to start the drug war and make it all illegal. It's all horse shit. It's
Mm,
all politics. It's not based on
mhm.
science. And it
Right.
hasn't worked. It
Yep.
hasn't worked. Okay. Every time you see a drug buzz, oh, we got 500 tons of cocaine in New York Harbor. That doesn't make a goddamn dent in
No.
the thing.
Mm-mm.
I mean, what are we doing? We need to rethink some of this stuff. But like I said, just like the pharmaceutical insurance stuff, I think a lot of this stuff is being rethought. I'm very happy that we have a president that's not beholden to all these entrenched interests. I don't care
I
what side
agree.
of the politics you're on, whatever you want to say about him, he's not captive to a lot of the special interest groups that politicians have traditionally been captive to. So
Correct.
I think we have great opportunities right now. I'm actually very, very optimistic about the future of the country. I'm generally an optimistic person. We got a lot of problems, but I think we've got a lot of smart people that are finally making their voices
I
heard.
agree. I mean, like you're saying with RFK, Tulsi Gabbard, and honestly, the one I'm really excited about is to see what Kash Patel does as
Me
director
too.
of the
Me too.
FBI,
Yeah.
because that's another organization that needs some major change as well. And I mean, I just
Mhm.
listened to Kash Patel on a podcast, and the stuff that he was disclosing that happens in politics is absolutely mind blowing.
Yeah.
That I think the general public doesn't even know about. And to your point, um, this is why free information like social media, internet, podcasts is great for us as a society because we're not beholden to mainstream media who is bought by pharmaceutical industries and it's being ran by government agencies in the background for propaganda. As
There are people
conspiracy theory.
that'll be like, "Man, we need these traditional news services." Well,
Yeah.
I mean, do you not know that most of the newspapers were founded by super rich people to basically advance their own personal positions? I mean, that has been true forever. It's the
Hmm.
same thing with the news. I mean, you think Rupert Murdoch isn't like directing Fox News to put the kind of news out, or Ted Turner at CNN? None of it has been objective ever.
Right.
So there's nothing to go back to is what I'm saying. Like there's no time in the past where the New York Times was completely neutral, and there's no time where
Hmm.
the Wall Street Journal was completely neutral, nor should they be, by the way.
Right.
It's okay to take a position on some of these things, but yeah, I think it's great because these walls that have filtered very smart people, the people that have a lot of energy, a lot of good stuff, these have all fallen, and
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
I just think it's awesome. I'm a big fan, and I've always been a little bit of a contrarian by nature, so I like people that push back against the system or whatever you want to
Mhm.
call it.
Mhm.
To me, that's kind of the. I mean, who wants to root for the New York Yankees, right? Or the
Right.
Dallas Cowboys? Who wants to, right? You want to root for the underdog. At least I
Yeah.
do.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And so you said you've been practicing law for 20, 25 years now?
25 years. Yeah, 25 years.
And you've always been a trial attorney?
Yeah. Yeah.
What made you choose
Started at a huge firm and then went off on my own after a couple years.
what made you choose that particular field of law and not, something else like divorce attorney or something like that?
So when I was 5 years old, my mother went to the doctor. She was an Air Force nurse, went to the doctor, and she ended up going to the doctor like 5, 6 times over 2 years. Hey, I got a lump in my breast. And they, oh, don't worry about it. It's nothing, blah, blah, blah. They didn't do a biopsy the first 5 times. When they finally did one, she had metastatic breast cancer that spread everywhere. She was given 6 months to live, lived for 5 years, and then died when I was 10 and my brother was 8. And my dad hired a lawyer to sue the government. Of course, I had no idea this was going on and won the case. And it wasn't a ton of money, but it was enough for him as a single file. He was a lieutenant colonel in the Air Force. It was enough for him to raise my brother and I. And then I found out about it later, and it was like that money was what helped my brother and I go to college.
Mm.
And so I was literally sitting in my office as a first year lawyer, and my wife calls me up crying, and she goes, "Have you ever read your mother's case?" I said, "What are you talking about?" She goes, "I just pulled it up on the research, legal research deal." And so I read my mother's case. You can look it up on Google, Beckham versus the United States. It's very sad, but it was also awesome because she was talking about my brother and I and how she wanted to see us get married and graduate from college and all this stuff. But the point is I saw, first of all, this guy needed to be held accountable. This doctor who fucked up needed to be held accountable. And
Mhm.
it also, I saw the good that my dad did by going through this process. And so I think subconsciously, like I said earlier, I root for the underdog.
Mhm.
So I think subconsciously, I saw, and I actually called the lawyer that represented my family about 10 years ago. He's long since retired. He's 80 something years old. He was a judge in upstate New York. I said, "Hey, man, you're not going to remember me, but my name's Brian Beckcom." And he goes, "I absolutely remember you. You're Linda
Wow.
Beckham. You're Linda Beckham's son. That was the most emotional case I ever handled." And I said, "Well, I just want to let you know that I'm now 40 something years old. And what you did on my case enabled me to go to law school. And I'm now doing what you're doing for other kids and other families." And he was pretty happy to hear from me. And so
That's
I
awesome.
think, yeah, I think that's kind of how I started in computer science and philosophy. And people are like, "How did you go from computer science and philosophy to law?" And
Mhm.
the joke I say is I spent 4 years in a computer lab with a bunch of nerds, and I didn't want to do that my whole life. And so I went to law school. What do I do 20 years later? I spend my whole life in front of a computer with a bunch of nerds. Right?
Uh,
So, but yeah, it's real fulfilling for me to be able to, like, I had this 13-year-old girl I represented probably at least 15 years ago. Got her a great settlement, and I got a letter from her mom and a letter from her when she graduated from high school. I got a letter from her when she got into the University of Texas. I got a letter from her when she graduated from the University of Texas, and I got a letter from her when she graduated from law school with a picture.
wow.
And it
That's
was like,
awesome.
we wouldn't have been able to do this without the work you had done on the case. And so, I mean, that is way. It sounds stupid, but it is way more fulfilling than the settlement itself to kind of be able
Mhm.
to do that. And look,
Mhm.
I make a lot of money. I'm not going to be shy about that. Okay. I make a very, very good living, mainly because I'm really good at what I do. But I also get to represent I could make a lot of money representing big corporations. I could make a lot of money doing that, but it's not nearly as fulfilling as having clients that still friends with 20 years after I represented them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's so cool. That is so cool. Not only for just from that story of your old client, but even just how you're able to get in contact with the judge that handled your mother's case. I mean, that's so cool.
Yeah,
Where
yeah.
did you go to law school?
I went to undergrad at Texas A&M, and I went to trade school at the University of Texas. That's the way I say it. I I don't know, no, much about Texas A&M in Texas, but there's been a rivalry for
Mhm.
well, A&M was started first, like in
Yeah.
1876, and then our little brother Texas, they came along later. And there's always been a rivalry between the two schools. And I went to Texas A&M, was in the Corps of Cadets, played basketball there, computer science and philosophy. Then I went to Texas, and all my Texas buddies are like, well, you're a Texas Longhorn." I said, "No, no, man, I got my education Texas A&M. I went to trade school in Austin." So, but at the time, Texas was by far the best law school in the state of Texas, and
Mm.
it was nice because I'm some dumb redneck Aggie, and I'm just
Mhm.
whipping the ass all these Ivy League, Harvard, Yale. Oh, one of my favorite things to do, Bo. We would be at law school, and there'd be all these people from these Ivy League schools, and I'm just some dumb redneck Aggie. And one of the things you'd always do is ask where you went to undergrad. People would be, "Oh, yeah, where'd you go to school, Brian?" "Oh, I went to Texas A&M." "Where'd you go to school?" "Oh, I went to Yale." And I'd look at them and I'd be like, "Man, I've heard of that. Is that Is that in my that's a pretty decent school in California?" And I pretend like I didn't know what they were talking about. And it would be
Yeah.
so funny to watch their reactions because a lot of the times these idiots would be like, "Is this guy serious? Like, this guy
Yeah.
can't be that stupid."
Yeah.
But the more self-aware ones, they would know that I
Yeah.
was messing with. But
Do
yeah,
do you
I
think
went
that
to
that makes a difference on where you go to law school? Or do you think it's more what
I
matters
do.
more is who you learn under?
I think it matters a little bit. I'm gonna offend some people when I say this, but I think people that go to Ivy League schools are weird,
Mm.
and not all of them. But in order to get into Harvard and Yale and some of these schools nowadays, you have to be working on this from the time you're 10 years old. I mean, this is not normal. Like, this is bizarre. This is weird. And like the Ivy League schools have produced some really, really, really bad people. So in my business, you not only have to be smart, but you have to be able to relate to people like everyday people. And so I actually have a rule. I will not hire somebody that went to Harvard or Yale or a school
Mm.
like that. If you went to Texas A&M and were in the Corps of Cadets, or if you were a college athlete, you're guaranteed an interview. That doesn't mean I'm going to hire you, but you're guaranteed. So I want athletes. I want people that were competitive in something. I want people that
Mhm.
went to public school. I don't want somebody that went to private school from the time they were 10 years old until the time they were 25 years old because they never in the real damn world. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
so I look for, and obviously I want people that are super duper smart, but
Mhm.
some of these so-called smart Harvard people couldn't change a tire, couldn't cook a steak, couldn't put somebody in an arm bar,
Yeah.
couldn't put up a tent. I
Yeah.
mean, how smart are you really? I mean, so you can do a bunch of math problems. Who gives a shit? Like, that
Right.
doesn't mean you know what I mean? Like, if we were back 100, 250 years ago, that's going to be the guy that's going to be left behind first.
Yeah.
He's going
Yeah.
to be the guy that can take down the deer.
Yep.
That's going to be the most valuable person. So anyway,
How do you think that you got successful as a trial attorney? Do you think it was just a lot of trial and error? Was it mentors? Like, how do you get to be a great attorney?
you got to be relentless.
Mm.
Okay. So I'm smarter than most of the people I go against, but I go against people that are smarter than me. I'm pretty good at public speaking, but I go against people that are better public speakers. Uh, I'm good at the law, but there's people that are better at the law. But there's nobody that's more relentless than I am. And that's the difference. And I think that applies in just about anything. When people say, like my dad and brother, I got two generals fired this year, which I'm very happy about. And my brother and dad were telling me, they said, "Man, I would not want to be on your bad side because once you put your teeth into something, you
Yeah.
never let up." And so think about like the dynamics of that, Bo. If I'm going against an insurance company and they know from 20 years of reputation that I am never going to give up, that I'm going to be so persistent and relentless that I'm just going to wear their ass down. It's like jujitsu. I'm going to pin
Mhm.
you and you're going to give up eventually.
Mhm. Mhm.
That by itself will enable you to be successful. Just like you're in business. If you're persistent and people know you will never quit, you will be relentless until you get what you want. Those are the kind of people that get what they want. And so
Yep.
to me, when somebody says I'm relentless or somebody says I'm persistent, that is the biggest compliment I can get.
That's awesome, and it matches the podcast too, the title of the
Yeah,
podcast,
it
and
sure
that's what
does. Yeah,
that's what I
I just
preach all the
realized that.
time.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what I preach all the time, not only on the podcast, but on my social media,
yeah.
is if you want something in life, I don't care if it's weight loss or you want to become a millionaire or a billionaire, you have to be relentless and you cannot stop.
My brain is screwed up as far as that goes, and I think it's a good screw up. But I'm telling you, man, you can beat me, but you're gonna have to kill me. Like,
Yeah.
and I say that, I'm saying that kind of not I'm not saying some lawyer needs to come over and kill me, but I'm saying that like my brain is like I'm obsessed about this notion, and I think part of the reason for this is the number one lesson my dad gave me growing up was don't quit.
Yeah.
Don't
Yep.
quit. Don't quit. Don't once you've started something, you need to finish it. Period. No excuses. Finish what you start, and
Yep.
then you can move on to something else. And that's kind of been my mentality for my entire life. Like when I was playing basketball in college, I'm 6'1", 200. I was 200 pounds at the time, 95 pounds, going against guys 6'5", 6'6", 250. I, let's go. Let's go. I mean, come on. I'm not afraid of you. Let's go. I mean,
Yeah.
you're taller, you're faster, you're stronger, but I'm fucking tougher than you.
Yeah.
And let's see if you can deal with that. And so that's kind of just like deeply, deeply ingrained in my DNA.
I love it, Brian. Brian, I could talk to you for another hour, man. I had a blast. I really appreciate you coming on. Where can everybody get a hold of you and learn more about you or get your services?
Brian Beckcom Lawyer is my Instagram. I'm on all the social media. VB Attorneys, that's V as in Victor, B as in Brian, VB Attorneys. We got all the social media, all the websites. And then the podcast it's on all the podcasts and YouTube and stuff. It's called Lessons from Leaders with Brian Beckcom, Jiu-Jitsu, military, New York Times bestselling authors, business people. I feature positive leaders is what I do. So in fact, there was my latest podcast was a Norwegian philosopher. It's called the Viking Code. He talks about
Hmm.
how this small country has been so successful and kind of why they've been successful. So it's been great, Bo. I really appreciate you having me on the show. I've really enjoyed this
Th-
a lot.
yeah, me too. Thanks for coming on. And everyone, go check out Brian. His contact info will be in the show notes. Brian, thanks again, man.
Let's go.